Hello everybody and welcome to my homestead. No, this is not what the podcast is going to be about. I'm just home editing and feel like I need to intro this. Freaking birds. Oh, now I have to go to a different part of the house. Okay, I'm walking away. Are you happy? Okay, I need to preface this podcast episode because we are interviewing the wonderful Lizzie from Fierce Lizzie on Instagram. She's a doula, a podcaster, a business owner. Wow, nothing with this episode is going right. Wonderful human being. We had a wonderful conversation. Loved this episode so much and you're gonna love it so much. Here's the thing though. We used a new streaming platform. The internet connection wasn't super great supposedly and some stuff dropped out. So it's not the most perfect episode ever, but I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to gain a lot of wisdom and tips and tricks for all things life, homeschool, birth, all the things. So why am I winded? I didn't do anything. But anyways, I hope you guys love this episode. Let's get into it. Welcome to Under the Sun Podcast. I'm Ilea.
And I'm Irene. Grab a cup of coffee and your comfiest sweats and join us every Monday as two best friends discuss everything from raising free-range gremlins to business and really everything under the sun.
Let's get started and thanks for being here.
Okay, well, welcome to the podcast, Lizzie.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited you're here. So for all of our listeners who maybe don't know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and what's going on lately?
Sure. So I am a doula and a birth educator. So that's my job and my passion, right? And I've had 3 hospital births, even though I really, really wanted a home birth with my third. It didn't happen. And so really that is who I love helping. I don't like going to the hospital births, but I do. I'd rather go to the home birth. But with my childbirth education, I really help moms who are having hospital births. So they're not walking in and just being completely like blindsided by the quote unquote birth that's happening inside the hospital.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you want to talk about your births or give us because you have 3 kiddos?
Yeah, I have 3, so we could be on here for a long time. But I'll give you like the kind of I guess the origin story, like enough to like see kind of like how I got to where I am.
Yeah, because you weren't a doula when your first one was born, right?
No.
Okay.
No. Mm-mm. So with my first, and this was 10 years ago. So she's 10 years old. So 11 years ago when I was pregnant, I knew I wanted an unmedicated birth. My mom had 2 unmedicated hospital births. It was always instilled in me that like your body knows what to do. Like you just birth your baby. And I very distinctly remember her always saying like, I just, I prayed that it would just be done and I could get through it. And I did. And that's what it was. And as soon as the birth is over, like it's over and there's no more pain. I was like, cool, I can do that. And so I had this really big belief. And then I went and I was in labor and I was like, holy crap, Mom, this is not something that I can just pray away. Like this is really hard. And so I almost didn't make it to the end unmedicated, but I did. And that birth felt like really empowering. Like, oh, I did it. I hit my goal. But that was my only goal. Was I walked into that birth and I said, I don't want an epidural. And I didn't get an epidural, but I got everything else. Everything else that comes along with it. And then I didn't know. Then I was like, that felt really empowering. But now that I know what I know, that was not an empowering birth. I was not in charge. I was not the authority in the room. I still had all the cervical checks. I still had Pitocin. I still, all of the things. And the outcome that matches, my daughter had passed meconium, which we knew. And then she aspirated on the meconium and her fetal heart tones were not good. I mean, we can point that to probably the Pitocin. So now that I look back on that birth, is like, that's what I want to help moms avoid. Even just wanting that unmedicated birth and having that belief in birth isn't really enough to get kind of the birth you want. So that was my first birth. And then 5 years later, I'm pregnant again. Still not a doula. Still not in this birth world. And I'm so cocky. I'm like, I've done it before. I can do that again. I'll just go into the hospital and have my baby and everything will be great. And again, I didn't get the epidural, but I still got everything else. I had coached pushing so hard that I popped every blood vessel in my face, on my back, cervical checks, right? All of this stuff. So like, yes, I got my no epidural birth, but it's still like medicated, right? I mean, I didn't have Pitocin. That was my second goal. The second time I walked in, I said, I don't want an epidural and I don't want Pitocin. And it just, wasn't great. And it was actually that postpartum experience. I had some symptoms like postpartum depression. I tried to go back to work and I went and saw my OB and I said, look, I can't do this. Like, I looked it up. I know I can get additional leave from work if you sign this paper, saying I have postpartum depression. I can take some time off work, get my life together and figure out like what needs to be done. But like, this is not working. I'm in his office. I'm crying. And he hands me a tissue and a prescription for Zoloft and was like, well, that's the best we can do. Like, that's motherhood, basically. And I just could not believe it. And he like, how much strength it took for me to like go to him and like cry to him and ask him for help, for him to just like shut me down. Him, right? The male OB that was the best one in town. So that was really like my tipping point. And I left my job and became a doula. And then I get pregnant again. I'm like, okay, we're going to do it the right way this time. I'm going to have a home birth. Screw the hospital, not doing it. And then I realized I couldn't afford a home birth because I hadn't been working for a whole year and we were on one income. And where I live, home births are like $7,000 out of pocket. And so I was like, crap, I have to do this in the hospital again. Well, okay, this time, no one's telling me what to do. No one's pushing me around. I'm going to walk in ready to push my baby out. And it's just going to be, they're just watching just in case things, and that's what I ended up doing. And now that's kind of what I teach moms to do. So those were my 3 births.
Wow. Let me back up then. So your first birth, were you induced or did you get Pitocin after you already went there in labor?
So I wasn't induced. So I knew I wanted labor to start on its own. And I waited. I went like 10 days past my due date. I don't remember them ever being pushy with induction. This was, again, 10 years ago. And it was a military hospital. And in my experience, military hospitals or hospitals like Kaiser is what they're called here, where they're like group hospitals. And the insurance is the hospital. They're less pushy because they have to pay for everything. Like, it's not an OB that's billing your insurance, right? So I never was pushed or anything, but my waters broke before labor started. And of course, what did I do? I didn't know anything. I went in right away because that's what they tell you to do. And as soon as I get in, it's a military hospital. I will never forget this big man. And I felt so tiny, even though I was huge, right? I'm like the biggest I've ever been. Like, I'm so pregnant, but you're so vulnerable. And he was like, well, we need to start Pitocin. You need to get this baby out in 12 hours. And I was like, well, I really want to see if labor starts on its own. And he was like, okay, well, you have 24 hours because my waters had broke. That's the rule for the hospital. So I didn't get Pitocin until I was stuck at 7 centimeters. So, and ultimately I had her in 21 hours. So was it because I was stuck or was it because we were getting real close to that 24-hour mark? I don't know. So, and then my waters broke again with my second, and I did the same dang thing. I went in right away, and I was GBS positive, so I got the antibiotics, and the nurse told me to stay in the bed because my waters had broken.
Oh,
all of these things, yeah, for what we're calling like empowering birth, just because it's unmedicated, right? So it's like there's definitely varying levels of empowerment there.
Mm-hmm. So then you got the Pitocin at 7 centimeters. How was that, those contractions versus your second unmedicated?
I love this question because for me, I was like, okay, if I don't have Pitocin, it's going to be so much easier, right? I don't want Pitocin. It's going to be easy. It was so hard last time because of the Pitocin. It was equally as hard. Contractions were equally as challenging. But I wonder if I just had because I had a midwife and she's the reason that in my first birth, I got through to the end without the epidural because I asked and she was like, you can do it. Like, oh, like petting my hair, like you're so close to your goal and let's stay on your birth plan. And so I wonder if she had like a really conservative dose You know, like, and my body was already in labor, right? Like my body was already in labor. We weren't starting, it wasn't like a cold start, right? Like my body was already in labor. And so she probably just put like a conservative dose on just to get the contractions to be continuous, you know? Because I thought that my second birth would be easy breezy. And it was still, you know, labor is still labor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never had one of the pain-free births that a lot of women talk about.
Yeah.
Irene, have you had a pain-free birth?
No, I think I prepared in the wrong way because I read so many of the pain-free births that when I went in with my first, I was like, mind over matter. It's going to be fine. And then I had 16 hours of back labor. So that was not, I think it's definitely not mind over matter. So maybe on the third, I'll get that pain-free birth, but who knows?
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit of mind over matter. But I think telling moms that they can like strive for a pain-free birth is not doing a service to them whatsoever. I never tell moms that. I'm like, it's going to hurt. You're going to feel like you're dying. You're going to say you can't do this. You're going to want a cesarean because you're just going to want the baby out. And that means you're in transition. And you're just going to keep going. And you can do it. But yeah, because I experienced that a little bit with my mom saying like, oh, you can just, you know, relax and get through it. And I was like, what are you talking about, woman? That was not my experience at all.
So then what do you tell your clients and what do you teach about approaching this? Approaching pain and labor?
I mean, yeah, you have to know it's going to happen and knowing that it's going to get that bad, right? Knowing that you're going to feel like this is the worst thing I've ever felt ever, and I must be dying, while also knowing that you're safe and that's normal. And when you understand more of like the mechanisms of birth and what the contractions are even doing, it puts a little more logic into it. And so there's less fear because there's less unknown. You're like, okay, I knew this was going to happen. We're here. This is transition, hopefully. You know, these are the sensations I'm feeling. Like this is normal and my baby is coming and I'm getting closer. And that's when that mind over matter, for me, that's what worked for me, is just like the knowledge is power. Like once I know more and I understand it better, it's easier to just surrender instead of like suffer through it.
My daughter, my second born, I was GBS positive too, and I got to the birthing center and I heard somebody behind me say, I think it was the midwife, say, she doesn't have time for the antibiotic or whatever. And I remember sitting there because I could think, I'm still laughing, I'm still talking. I was like, what do you mean don't have time? I have like 15 hours to go. I haven't even like shut down yet. And she was born 30 minutes later. And I think that second time it was maybe a little more mind over matter because I'd already done it before. So it's like, okay, this is awful, but we're going to be fine. And that was that like relaxed point.
And but you thought like, it's going to be hours.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be hours. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm prepared for the long haul. And but it is once you feel like, okay, this is normal. Nothing I'm experiencing is going to kill me. Then it's just different. Still intense, but different.
Yeah, I always do think that second one because you know kind of what to expect. It's generally shorter than the first one.
There you go.
If you almost got there, like the moms that like got the epidural and they like labored for hours and they got the epidural, it's like you can totally do it the next time. Like you're gonna have your baby before you got the epidural for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. Ilea had I had both mine at a birthing center, and Ilea had her daughter at home. So she just bypassed all and stayed home the whole time, which was great.
I'm an not older mom, but I'm 30. I got pregnant, like I was 29 when I was pregnant or whatever. And I was the last of all my friends to have kids. So I heard every single story and I was there for both of hers, and her birth center was great. We just couldn't, I was actually originally going to be there, but I, couldn't get them to align on my guest date, and they had a hard cutoff at 42 weeks. And I was like, I just have a feeling, like, I mean, statistically, like I'm not going to go at 40 weeks. And anyways, but oh man, yeah, it was long, and it gives me hope.
It was like 36 hours or something, right? 26?
26?
26, yeah. I think.
26 hours. And she was just girthy. She had a 15-inch head, which, I don't know. Here, my home birth midwife told me that 13 was normal, 14 was large, and 15 is ouch. So, like, I don't know.
Ouch.
But here's my thing about GBS. Okay, and I want to hear your opinion on this. So, I, again, was at the birth center, ended up switching to a home birth at 37 weeks, and then got my GBS test through my home birth midwife. It was GBS positive. And I was like, I don't accept it. I just don't. So I was like, okay, I want to see if I can heal myself, because like it's a bacterial thing or whatever. At the time I was really educated on it. And I was like, I should be able to like boost my immune system enough to reduce it. Anyways, spent like 2 weeks. She was like, fine, I guess we could try to retest in a couple of weeks. So I took, I think 2 weeks to like heavy doses of vitamin C, lots of water. I have a whole list of what I did. And then I did another GBS, probiotic, usually in the gut flora, all the stuff. I have a whole, like, I can post it in our Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
But I did a whole like regimen of myself that I just, again, being your own advocate, I just threw the kitchen sink at it. And then I had no GBS at the second week. And she was like, I've never seen that before. And she's like, what did you do? So I sent her my list, and she now gives it to her GBS positive patients. And she said she's seen really like positive results. I was like, why
negative results?
Yes, sorry, negative results. But like, she's like, you know, if you were in a hospital, they would have never retested you. I'm like, well, I'm paying you. If I tell you to retest me, retest me.
Yep.
Like, so if anybody who's listening is GBS positive, like, run after your immune system, boost your immune system, and we'll post. So yeah, anyways, what do you think of that? Have you had any experience with any of that?
Yeah, I agree 100% that like moms should be working on this list for like just in pregnancy, because it's just, these are all good things for your body anyways. So working on that GBS status and your good gut and bacteria health from the get-go, so that you can just ward off that, like even having to retest, right?
Right.
But so I asked to retest with my third, because I was GBS positive with my second. With my first, I don't even think they tested me. I'm telling you, 10 years ago, I don't even think they tested me. So with my third, you know, I got tested, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do all these things. And I just, you know how that goes. Like, you're like, what probiotic? I ran out 3 months ago. And, you know, so I asked to retest. I was positive. I asked to retest, did all the things at this provider. So providers either will swab you themselves. So they'll be like, oh, we're going to check your cervix and go ahead and swab you at the same time. Like, take your pants off. But this, I had Kaiser again with the group. That group care is a little better in terms of they have so many patients, right? Like that they don't do as much as like a private OB. They handed me the swab and went to go swab myself. I was like, I'm not swabbing myself. And I didn't even swab myself correctly and put it in the tube and sent it off, and I was still positive. That's weird. Huh. So you can ask to retest, but who knows what it will actually say. And who knows even if your first test is how accurate that is, because antibiotics in labor is beneficial to the hospital when you can just get infections from being in the hospital. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, because they're checking you every hour.
I think if we look at like mortality rates of like maternal mortality, infection is one of the higher ones up there. I mean, typically that's like with a cesarean birth, right? Where you're having major surgery, but like it's beneficial. Like they don't care if you're on antibiotics. That's great. You know, that's great for them. They're preventing infection in general. So that's what I think about that.
But ignoring the fact that it's wrecking your gut microbiome for the next 2 years. It's like, but they don't have to deal with that. They don't have to live with that daily repercussion, but you do.
Well, and it's yours and your baby's.
Yep.
Because my first aspirated on the meconium, so she had to have antibiotics because she inhaled, poop. And then my second, I was on antibiotics the whole time in labor. Both of them had chronic yeast diaper rashes.
The holiday season is here, and we're all eating too much sugar and too many pies. And
no regrets.
Some regrets because we all feel like trash. Yes. We're all inflamed. We all have that runny nose or that indigestion or the stanky farts. We all have these issues right now when you eat too much sugar. So maybe that means your body needs some extra support.
Yes.
Maybe you need some liver lover.
Yeah. If you go to bioray.com, you can use code UTSP10 to get 10% off your order. They have a little quiz you can fill out where you can say like, oh, I'm bloated or I'm tired or I'm constipated. And I don't know. Those are not the questions. They're better laid out questions. But
answer the questions. They have someone on call that can answer your questions. If you have specific ones, they'll help you figure out what supplements you need, what will help you feel like your best self.
Yep. So use our code UTSB10 and thank us later.
I don't know if your babies have ever had the yeast diaper rash, but it like doesn't go away because it's not a normal diaper rash. It just needs to be like cleaned and aired out, right? Like it's a yeast infection. And so it requires like special treatment. It's a little more resistant. It takes a little longer for like the first year because their gut was so wrecked. And then when I had my third, and it was like, she's never had a diaper rash ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
They are 10. Oh my gosh, 4, almost 5, and 3. And then I have a stepson who is 11. So we have 4. We're a blended family.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I love it. Just because I'm curious, because my labor was so long, and the thought of going to 2, especially just because my husband works a lot of hours, and a lot of it is on me. And Irene and I have podcasts and businesses that we run on the side, and she has business. I'm just like, why did you wait? You said 10 and 4?
10 and 4. Yeah, so they were like 5, almost 6 years apart. Well, because they're from different dads. So I was in a marriage and we had a baby and then we got divorced, and then I was a single mom for 5 years or however long in between. And then I met my now husband, and we actually got pregnant right away. Right away. Not planned.
Okay. I was gonna say,
no, we weren't trying. We were like barely just dating. So then we were like, guess we're in this for the long haul, baby. We're having a baby.
So then, okay, you have your second baby, you start becoming a doula. What, when did Instagram happen? When did your courses when did all that trickle in?
Ooh, yeah, let's talk some business stuff. So I was a teacher. Okay, so I'm a single mom and I'm a teacher and I live in California and I can barely pay my rent. I can't buy organic food. Like, it's hard. And so I started social selling. I was in an MLM. And that's when I started doing all the Instagram things. Oh, you post 3 times a day. Oh, you talk in stories. Oh, you share your life. Oh, you connect with women. So I started there. So I had a pretty good community and like experience going when I decided to leave teaching and pursue doula work. And so I kind of was doing both at that point, which, I mean, you guys know you can't be doing a bunch of business things. Like, you have to go all in on one thing if you're going to see success. Yep. So dropped the social selling, went all in on the doula-ing. And it was actually when I launched my course that like I blew up on Instagram, and I finally, the elusive like 10K, like, oh, I need to get above 10K so I can have links on my stories. Now everybody has links on their stories, but it was when I launched the first round of my birth course that like blew me up. So it was just like the marketing and all of that, like the promotion of the first launch of my course is how all my people found me. And I also stopped talking about everything. Like, I was talking about breastfeeding and birth and postpartum depression and avoiding the epidural. And I really honed in, okay, just want to talk about birth. I want to talk about unmedicated birth. And then it was really when I took it a step further and said, I want to teach moms like me who are having hospital births how to have more of like that home birth that they want, but they can't have for whatever reason. And that's when I found all my people on the internet. And then I started podcasting somewhere in there too. And here we are.
I love that. So we have a lot of moms in our community who, what would you recommend? They have to have hospital for whatever reason. And they're asking us questions. And it's like, we're in that phase where you research so much when you're pregnant. And then now that my kids are 2 and 4, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just have like, this is why I do this. I can't tell you why. I just do it because at some point I researched it. But what would you tell that? Like, what are some things you would recommend?
Yeah. So first of all, that's not enough either. Like, when you see your friend or the influencer and they're like, just decline antibiotics, just don't get the IV, just don't do cervical checks. Like, they're correct, right? Yeah. Like, yes, I agree with that. But when you don't have that understanding of why you're doing that, as soon as you step foot in that hospital and they're like, you have to, you're like, oh, okay. you know?
Yeah.
So you really have to have that deeper understanding. And that requires you to really like immerse yourself in this birth world. You should listen to podcasts. You should read books. You should get in a birth course that fits your needs, right? Because it's not just something that you can like read once, learn once, and then it's good. It really is a huge mindset shift. And when I have moms come into my program, some moms will come in at 34 weeks. That's my cutoff. If you are beyond 34 weeks, you can come, I guess you could come in, but like, you're not going to finish the program. You're not going to get as much out of it as you should. But those 34-week moms compared to the moms that come in at 20 weeks, the moms that come in at 20 weeks know so much. They have the biggest transformation. They have the most belief in their birth. They're the most ready. They get all of their questions answered. They're the least pushed around. They have the best advocacy skills. So it really is not, it's not a McDonald's drive-through thing, right? Just like everything in life, it's really a long kind of immersion process.
Do you have sections in your course for the husbands? Because I know a lot of times they, like, you tell them, hey, don't, you know, I told my husband, if something happens to me, I don't care what happens to me, just get the baby safe, but don't let them put anything on his eyes. Don't do this. Don't let him do this. Don't let him take him out of the room. Don't leave his sight. And Leah was at my birth because I knew if anything happened and we had to transfer, that my husband was going to be the most concerned about me. Because he said at the end of the day, you're my wife, and I like, and not to sound any kind of way, but like, we can make another baby, but you are my human, where I'm like, take care of the baby. If something happens to me, so she was on baby duty, and then the second time around, he's like, whatever, she can do it. But do you have stuff in there for the husbands to make them more assertive? Because I feel like they're so concerned about your well-being that if a nurse says your wife needs this or XYZ is going to happen, they're like, oh, just do it to keep my wife safe. But
it's not his decision.
It's not.
Ooh, I like that. We could talk about that in a
but you
second.
gotta get people used to it.
Yeah. And men, so, I mean, one big difference between men and women, right? Men are like the wife first, and moms typically are like the children first. So it's just funny, that difference. But men are problem solvers. They want to save you. They want to solve the problem. And if you're sitting in the hospital, what is the solution is all the things you don't want as the mom. And so they need to be like, basically in my program, we doula the dad, because a lot of the moms in my program can't afford a doula. And so they're making that investment in their childbirth education instead. I mean, you should have both, right? In a perfect world, we'd all be just birthing at home with the childbirth education and with the doula. But the whole fourth module inside of my program is the support module. And you take that with your partner. Like, even if your sister was going to be in your birth, you do that one with them, and there's different assignments and different things you have to talk about, and you go over basically everything so that they know what to expect. They know how to advocate. They know the support strategies. Because I mean, they should. It's not really fair to our husbands for them to walk into birth blind too. You know, it's their birth. They're going to have a better experience if they're prepared, and you're going to have a better experience if your partner is prepared.
Can we just acknowledge the fact that, like, you know, we're all talking about like advocacy, and I'm totally on board, but how annoying is it that we have to be this way? Yeah. Like, you know, it's same with like organic food. It's like, and, you know, learning, you know, things that are marketed as healthy, and then like people share that, hey, this is actually not healthy. And then people get triggered in the comments. It's like, hey, we're not the people who are the problem. It's Monsanto. It's the doctors. Like, we're not being, like, none of us want to be this way. We don't want to have to like fight for the birth we want. It's just the world we live in. Like, it's just annoying. Yeah. I just find it annoying that we have to be this way. We can't just trust that the doctors that we pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to just give us our basic needs. So,
yeah, it's really gross. It's really gross how women are treated in our maternity care system. Yeah. I mean, they're just treated like children, and they're stupid, and they don't know how to make a decision. And
oh, honey,
they won't let you do anything. Exactly.
I hate the term, they don't let you.
Yeah.
Like, that's, again, when I got pregnant, I like just deep dived into everything. I listened to every single podcast that was out there, including a lot of yours. And a lot of your Instagram resources and stuff too, but like you deep dive into it, and you're just like, oh, like, yeah, I'm in charge. Like my husband is, it is his child too. We are in this together, but at the end of the day, it is me. And like, I don't know, he always respected all of that. And he was really deep diving into it with me. And it was, I don't know, like make your partner do it, of course, too. So that's great. Do you have any further questions?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I do love that you have hospital specific stuff though.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people like our compromise was I wanted the birth center first, not to make sure I could do it, but just like I've never had a baby before. So what if something does happen? Second time, I probably would have had her at home. Third one, I'm just going to not tell them I'm in labor and have it at home and whatever. But I just love that for some people I've heard, well, not that my husband won't let me, but you are co-parenting with this person. And if that person doesn't have the education and is afraid, all that to say, I love that you have hospital resources because some people either can't afford a birthing center or a home birth. I just love it. It's
yeah.
so
I think I was going to say the excuse, but the reason with agreeing with your husband, I think that one is just BS, which is kind of why when Ellie was like, I'm the boss, right? Like even my husband isn't like, I think that is just because that's just a lack of education. Like have them watch The Business of Being Born and call it that. And now go have your home birth. Like, they just, I just don't like it. I just hate that one. I just, because it's so stupid. Like they don't have a uterus. They don't know anything about birth. And yet you are weighing their decision heavier than yours. And you're the one giving birth. So I just don't like that one.
Go through all the discomfort.
And discomfort, and you're going to be the one that's traumatized. And exactly. I mean, no, husbands do get traumatized with traumatic births, but there's also some more valid like reasons, like even you could say not affording it is not a valid reason. Like swipe that card and go pay it off later because 10 years from now, $6,000 is nothing in 10 years. Like you're going to pay that off and you're going to have this birth of your dreams that you revisit every year. Like when it's your baby's birthday, like it's always there. It never goes away. That investment, that $6,000 is nothing. It's nothing. So even that is not a great excuse, but like I get that one because that was me. Yeah. But some states you can't have home birth, right? You can't have there's home birth midwifery is illegal.
Crazy to me.
Yeah. And each state has different rules for midwives. So like in California, if you're having twins, you have to have an OB. You can't have a home birth midwife. So there's all of these reasons that moms kind of like get risked out of it as well. So yeah, there's lots of moms who are in the hospital wishing that they were having home births.
Which I feel like but like doctors so quickly want to throw women into the high risk category so that they can like still exert that control over them and keep them in their constraints. Because I've had friends who are like, I'm going to go talk to my doctor about switching to a birth center or a hospital. I'm like, you don't need to talk to him about nothing. Just like disappear into the nothingness. And he's like, not going to call you. He's not going to say how you doing because he doesn't care.
Yeah.
I'm a little pessimistic though. Sorry.
I actually had an OB do that. I switched insurances because once I figured out I couldn't have the home birth, I was like, well, I'm going to go have this super cheap hospital birth then with like the difference, the HMO versus PPO insurance. And he actually called me. The OB called me.
Wow.
I was like, well, maybe I picked the right one. I don't know. But I was really surprised with that. You said something else that, I was just gonna say, asking permission or going to have that conversation with your hospital provider about switching to a birth center or home birth is like, if you had a hairstylist, you wouldn't go to your hairstylist and be like, I'm thinking about going to this other gal over here. Like you would never do that. It's so stupid.
or you also wouldn't say like, I really want to go this chocolate brown. What do you think? And then your hairstylist being like, I think you should be red. So let's go red.
We're just going to do it. You don't have any options.
Yeah. That's just that. In what other scenario would we still pay them full price for them not giving us what we want? In what other world?
Yep. I love using the hairstylist as like.
Well, she's a hairstylist.
I know. So it works perfectly. But you would ask your hairstylist like, okay, I think I want to go platinum blonde. And your hairstylist would say, well, like, what would you say, Irene? If I said I want to go platinum blonde, you'd be like...
I'd have a long list of questions.
Right. And,
Well,
and it's
it'd
like,
take a long time. It could damage your hair. Here's the risk versus benefit, right?
right.
Yep.
It's not going to look like
Informed
this.
consent.
It's going to look like this. That's what the hairdresser would do. And then you would do whatever you wanted. Like some hairdressers might turn you away and like send you to someone else, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what providers should do. If your provider's like, I'm not comfortable with no cervical checks, I'm not comfortable with delayed cord clamping, then they should be handing you off to someone who is. So it's really, I mean, it's a great comparison when you talk about service
Ego
providers.
is in the way.
Oh, yeah.
Their ego is in the way. It's like, that's the problem. I don't do hospital photography anymore just because I'm not emotionally, I can't keep myself separate.
Yeah.
And I've seen too many things. And so I was in a birth and one of the doctors, who was a female, was like, and it had only been like 6 hours or something. And she was like, well, you should probably break your water because if it doesn't break, the baby just won't come out. And it's stuck in there and it gets in the way. Meanwhile, this girl I'm taking photos for has seen my birth video and knows that like my daughter was born in call. Irene's daughter was born in call. We had talked about all this. And her and her husband both looked at me and I was just like, don't say anything with your face. Don't say anything with your face. Because like, that's just either you're really stupid and a doctor for some reason practicing on people, or you're like blatantly lying. Like what do you say to your clients who like to address that? What would you say? Like, hey, if this happens, do you just say like, shut up? Like, what do you do?
Because I think what was your response was like, you can't, like, I'm not here to make decisions. I'm just here to take pictures.
I'm not your doula. Like I'm not, just because I know a lot about birth doesn't mean your decision is my responsibility. So like there was too much of that. So what would you?
I mean, first of all, I do not take clients who aren't like 100%, like in-person clients aren't 100% aligned with my values of birth, because it ends up being a disaster because they get into the hospital and they're like, yes, anything. Yes, yes, yes. And I'm standing there watching and I'm telling them, okay, well, don't forget, you know, you have this option or this option, but it doesn't matter because their values aren't there. And now I'm being traumatized because I'm watching this quote unquote birth unfold, right? Yeah. So I only take clients that are like me. And they do my birth program. And so they know the red flags. They know that that's BS. They will roll their eyes and say, I'm fine with laboring and continuing to labor like this for now. I'll let you know if I change my mind. They have the one-liners in their pocket. Like it's a lot easier for me to support that birth because I'm just giving little reminders or reminding them of their one-liners or answering anything that maybe is not exactly how we covered it previously. It just makes my job. Now I'm really there to support. Kind of like when you go to a home birth and you're just there to support. You're not there as this, bodyguard.
Yeah.
Because it does quickly turn into that in the hospital.
I am traumatized by the births I've seen in the hospital. And I just had to be like, it's not worth it, because then I go home and like, it took like a month for me to recover, because this doctor was like, if you look at the charts later, you'll see that's why I gave you the episiotomy. But if you would have gotten the epidural, it wouldn't have hurt so much. And it's like shaming the mom for not getting the epidural. And I'm just like, I was just enraged and like sad, and I wanted to, so I like reported him to the like ethics.
My
he
favorite though is that he yelled at you to stop recording. And I'm so
and I
glad
kept
you
recording.
didn't. Yeah.
He said, I didn't want you to record because I was concerned about litigation. And I was like, that's alarming that you're admitting that. What are you doing that you're concerned that I would capture? So I just kept recording. So anyways, I reported him. But like, I still like, my heart races when I think about that birth. And I'm like, so people who are listening and you think like, you're not every care, like the hospital might be numb to it, but the personal people you hire, the doula, the midwife, the photographer, can be like, we're scarred too. Like we're right there with you, and we want more for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like, how can I move on from knowing that you could have had better? Like I do get like personally invested in their births, and I don't want any woman to go through that, but I'm right there with you. I only take one client a month just because, you know, I homeschool and I have the online side of things and I can't take more than that because being on call is rough when you have kids. But yeah, it takes me about a month when I have like a hospital birth, even one that goes well, like one where there's not a lot of intervention. I mean, it's just that second stage and that third stage when you're pushing and that, you know, the birth of the placenta, it's just a mess in the hospital. And there's not a whole lot that you can do.
Just ramrod you.
Yeah. It's a freight train, just whoosh, comes right through and screws up however peaceful your laboring was before that. Yeah.
I'm in a like mom's group on Facebook, and every once in a while, as someone gets pregnant in the group, a post will come up about that, you know, that joke meme where on I Love Lucy where they're patting the bread and it's like, oh, that was me. That was the worst part of my whole labor. And it's like, I don't have that experience because they pretty much left me alone. So, I mean, they'd push if they need to, but it was always like gentle. They always warned me like, hey, are you okay if I press here? It was just, I'm glad I didn't have that experience to relate to.
Yeah. The fundal massage is what you're talking about, right? Yeah. That's the other thing
like,
is
they're
it's
just
like
so much gentler if you're not in the hospital. I feel like they just get it out, hurry up before you hemorrhage to death. It's like, okay, go ahead.
And nobody, I mean, 1.8% of moms are having home births. So 1.8% of moms know about that. And everyone else is like, oh, it's supposed to be like this. Oh, it's supposed to hurt. Oh, they have to push on my belly. So that's another thing that I love to do with my moms is like, look, this is the home birth. And they're going to make you think you're crazy for wanting that, but it's a legitimate option. Like moms are doing it this way at home all the time.
That's why I really wanted to film and record my home birth, because like through my research, I heard a lot about like, oh, I want to do a home birth, but not for the first one. I want to do it, make sure I can do it, and then get it for my second. And then I was like, well, I hear the stories of how it goes the first time, and I just call it, it was seriously my gut intuition. I'm like, nope, this is where I have to be. I have to be at home. And I want to record it however it comes out and then post it. And like, luckily, like, I mean, the thing has like 1.1 million views. And all of the comments are like, thank you for showing what real birth is like. Nothing to do with me. Cause like, there's nothing special about me. I'm not extra strong. I'm not super resilient. My pain tolerance isn't high. It's just, women can just do it. Like we all have it within us. We just need to set up the right things around us to where we can get it. And so like, I don't know. I just want to encourage any mom who's listening to this that like, there's nothing special about the home birth moms or the natural moms. Like we just all have it in us. We just need to set the right team members in place.
It's that investment. You've invested in your support team. You've invested in your care. You've invested in your education, not just money, but time. You did your whole GBS protocol. Like that's the difference.
Yeah. Is
you took the time to prepare for it and to make it be what you wanted it to be instead of just hoping and wishing and walking in and being like, well, the baby's going to come out one way or another. Like, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So, on that note, with hospital births, a lot of the times they want you to birth on your back. And we talked about this because I want to talk about this. That because it happened, again, in that birth that I'm still traumatized by, that makes me sweat, that like she was laboring just fine. She was on her hands and knees. And then she started to like, you know, get a little pushy. And then they called the doctor in and they were like, he basically said, flip her over and put her legs in stirrups. And like, and then suddenly, heart decels are happening. We need to use the vacuum and give you an episiotomy. And I'm like, and then the mom looks at me and is like, hey, Leah, is this okay? And I'm like, this is not my responsibility, girlfriend. Like, I love you, but you hired me as a photographer and a videographer. You did not hire me to make like, I can't.
Yeah.
It's horrible to feel that. Like, I want to help, but also like, it's not my responsibility. So like, how the heck did we get here to where a doctor can come in and just say, yep, flip her over on her back, even though it's working against gravity? Like, what? How did we get here? Help us.
So, I mean, the moms pushing on their back is totally like a vantage point thing, right? And so it's easier for everyone else in the room to see what's going on when a woman is on her back. And I've literally heard providers, and I think this might have even been a midwife that said this, but in the hospital, I can't like do a cervical check if you are not on your back. Like they literally can't even check the cervix because it's not exactly textbook. Here's a leg, here's the fundus. Like they're flipped upside down. Like they can't do it because they just don't see birth. And then, 90% of their births are with an epidural. So they're just doing it, the checklist, the way they like to do it. And that is the way that they can see everything that's going on. And I mean, if we want to get into a little bit of birth history, King Louis XIV, it's rumored that he started it because he was like perverted and got off on watching women give birth. And he enjoyed, he had all these wives, right? And he wanted to watch them give birth. And that was the easiest way for him to see everything, as if they were on their back. And royal families, I mean, traditionally gave birth as a public event for like centuries, that everyone watched the royal babies be born. And so just gross.
That's horrible.
And so that's why it started, that women, started laying on their back, was apparently this King Louis XIV.
Wow. But like, how weird is it that like some royal random dude could impact the medical system that way then? Like, that's weird. Very interesting politics. Okay, so then that's a terrible idea. Do you ever recommend a woman giving birth on her back? Is that ever like a thing that you're like, yep, this is the right decision?
Well, so there's a difference, right? So there's lithotomy position versus being on your back. Lithotomy position is on your back with your legs in stirrups. And then we can go ahead and put coached pushing on top of that, where they're telling you to hold your breath and tuck your chin and push as hard as you can and like pull your legs and push, hurry, she's almost here. Like it's so frantic. And it's like you're running a sprint, and that's how it really is. That's how they do it. I would never, ever, ever recommend that. Some women though will intuitively birth on their backs, but it's never flat on your back while you're pulling your knees. It's never that. And it is more common. Most moms will choose to birth intuitively on hands and knees or standing up. That's what feels best. But some moms will I'm sure you've seen moms give birth in the water and they're kind of like leaning back, but they're not flat on their back.
Daughter pulled a banana out of the garbage and took a bite before I could stop her. And the only thing I could think of is there are worms on that. It's been in the garbage. Who knows what other rotten, raw meat goop is in the garbage.
Gross.
So, yeah. How do you deworm yourself?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you weren't doing the ad. I thought you were just telling me a story. I was like, that's so gross.
Yes.
On that same note, Leo today, she started licking the bottom of her shoes.
Ew.
And I just happened to throw on her chicken boots.
Yeah.
And she licked the bottom of her shoes, and there has
the
been
chicken boots.
So like literally my brain was like, I have to like go back on the deworming you thing, because like you just like definitely ate worms.
Yeah.
So that means you should go to rogershood.com and buy the Parify kit to detox yourself and your kids from all the worms, because you can pass them between each other through touch and kisses and all those things. Use our code
UTSP10. You'll get 10% off your order.
I'm a little queasy from this ad.
Yeah, I know. Our kids are gross.
Get rid of them worms. Kids are the grossest. They lick stuff they shouldn't.
They really do.
So
it's awful.
Deworm them.
Yes.
And plus they won't have as many emotional outbursts and
tantrums.
All the things. Yes. So deworm your kids. UTSP 10.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we know that the pelvis opens and we have our sacrum, our like tailbone. It if you're flat, it can't move back, and it needs to move back for the baby to come through. So, you never want to be flat on your back. If a mom had like an epidural or something like that, you'd want to do like maybe side lying, but never flat on your back and not in like that lithotomy position. You're more likely to tear, and it actually, you have a big vein. This is why they tell you not to be on your back when you're pregnant, right? Because it cuts your blood circulation down, because your uterus is so heavy, it's pushing on this major vein. And if you're not getting blood and oxygen, your baby's not getting blood and oxygen, but yet then we tell moms to go ahead and lay flat on their back to push. Same with fentanyl.
You have all the heart rates dropping and all the panicking.
Yeah, all of
of
that
course
too.
the heart rates are dropping. Cutting off all your oxygen.
What did you just say about?
Oh, so they're like, don't lay on your back when you're pregnant, but when you're giving birth and it's easier for me to catch your baby this way, it's fine. Same with like the fentanyl. Don't do fentanyl. Like, it's bad. Definitely don't do it when you're pregnant. But in the epidural, it's fine. Like, it just, where's the logic?
A lot of women
there?
don't know that that's what's in it.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of fentanyl and like an anesthetic, and that's why it works so well, because you're able to keep it in the right balance so that you are awake and alert, but you don't feel anything. So it's very effective, but yeah, there's risks, of course, to it.
I have lots of friends who still have back pain from their epidural.
Yep.
And it's been years. Pardon my phone. Sorry. I just keep it on because I have a client who could go, like, she's 42 weeks today.
That's right.
But yeah, okay. So I want to get into, I saw your Instagram stories. I was following it like a hawk because I knew about, Irene, have you ever heard of Twilight's birth?
Just from what you've told me.
Okay. So I was following your Instagram stories as you were posting them, like, you know, back to back, and they're saved in a highlight reel if anybody wants to go look through them.
Yeah.
What's Fierce Lizzie is your handle.
That's my handle. Okay. Yeah.
But tell me about Twilight Birth and how and why all of that came to be.
So this is actually perfect because we were just talking about the epidural, right?
Yeah.
So this was like right at the turn of the 20th century. And there's these two OBs, Kronig and Goss. They're German, right? They decide, like, okay, we're going to try giving these two drugs, scopolamine and morphine, to moms in labor. So this is kind of like when surgery is starting to become more mainstream, right? We're kind of really like practicing these different surgeries and anesthetics, and, you know, this is the 1900s. So morphine is going to be the pain relief for women in birth. Scopolamine is a drug that would cause like kind of like drowsiness and amnesia, but also like euphoria. So the idea was that if they did like the right combo of those drugs, which is kind of like how the epidural is like just the right combo, right? But if they did the right combo of these two drugs, the pain would be reduced without completely knocking them out. So they'd be kind of a little like loopy, but they'd still be awake and they wouldn't have pain. Okay. And these two drugs did have that desired effect, but there were lots of like medical problems, like slowed heart rate, decreased respiration. And it actually, the euphoria was more like delirium. So the moms were like really out of it. And doctors were not supportive of this at all. So these two doctors are doing it in Germany. All these other doctors are like, I don't know, this sounds like a bad idea. But the women are nuts for it because they just go in and, you know, they've never had pain relief in childbirth ever before. They just go in and they get these drugs and then they all of a sudden have their baby. Because they didn't remember anything that was happening to them. So this is happening in Germany. And then in 1912, the first American woman went to Germany to have her baby via Twilight Birth, or Twilight Sleep is another thing that it's called. And she like brings back this birth story of it. It's just like so luxurious and it was like a fairy tale. And then these two reporters from... Maybe, I don't know. And then, so there's a magazine called McClure Magazine. It's like a woman's magazine. These two reporters, journalists from the magazine, like go to Germany and they're going to like, they want to go see Twilight Sleep and see what it's all about and like write about it and bring it back to America. Right. And the doctors don't let them in. They're like, no, you can't come in here. Like, no. And so they like go back to America and they bring back a pregnant woman and they like send her in to like get the scoop on it. And they write this article. And they talk about how it's like this miracle, painless birth process. They don't talk about any of the controversy. They don't talk about any of the side effects. They don't mention that doctors are like refusing to do it, except for these two doctors in Germany. And women go crazy. They're like, I want that. This like fuels actually the first like feminist movement in the US. And the battle for like advocating for this Twilight Sleep was like a battle for women's rights, because it was they saw it as this was how they could take control of their childbirth, which is just so funny to me because I say the complete opposite, right? All the time, like, take control of your birth, like don't let the hospital do birth for you. So it's just so funny how we've kind of, you know, flipped. And we've seen this kind of back and forth several times in birth history. So women in the US are now like demanding twilight sleep. The rich ones are going over and having their babies in Germany. Everyone else is like, no, we want twilight sleep. And doctors are like losing clients, right? And so they're like, we got to start doing this. We got to start doing this in the US. So they start going to Germany. They watch a couple twilight deliveries. They come back and start doing it in their clinics. And these 2 OBs in Germany were like, no, you need to study under us for like 3 years before you can figure this out. US is like, no, it's cool. We're going to start doing it. So of course they're like cutting corners. There's a higher volume for these doctors of women, right? In Germany, they were doing like 1-to-1. Like the doctor would sit in there and monitor the mom. So like the Germany twilight sleep still had these risks, right? These not great outcomes. But then we bring it to the US and we butcher it. So doctors are like bringing it to their clinics. They're dosing everyone the same. They're leaving the room. The nurses are left to handle the woman until the baby comes. And it's bad. Okay. So like, we haven't even really talked about, if you go look at the photos are awful. So these women are delirious. So they're still feeling the effects of childbirth. And this is actually true now. Like if you get IV narcotics, you still feel the pain of childbirth. You're just really high. So you can kind of like check out a little bit mentally. So these women are delirious and they're in labor. They're thrashing all around. They're screaming. So what do? We start confining them. We get hospital beds. We put a tent over it and we zip them up in this tent so they can't hurt anyone or hurt themselves. Then they started putting like basically straight jackets on them. So their arms were tied up. They were left in these cots until the baby was out, and the women would just be like urinating on themselves and defecating on themselves, just like disgusting. So on top of all these risks, and then there's just like awful conditions, and these women didn't remember it because they had amnesia after. So like they were awake and it was an awful experience, traumatic. I'm sure their bodies remembered. I'm sure they had all these issues later.
The body keeps score.
Yes, it does. Exactly. Which is why we saw so many women now fighting for a natural birth kind of after this. So twilight sleep only lasted a couple of years. It was like in 1915, there's this woman who, she became like the face of twilight sleep. She was like the second US woman to go have her birth in Germany. She came back and started the Twilight Sleep Association. Well, when she had her third baby, she died during labor. And her husband had opened up a like twilight sleep clinic. So it was like a hospital that only did twilight sleep. Her husband and her lawyer were like, oh, her death was not related to twilight sleep. Like, of course they're going to say that, right? So it was around that time that it kind of finally started dying out because there was women dying and babies dying. But the epidural didn't become popular until the 1980s is when the epidural now is like the regular thing to do. So between 1915 and 1980, or somewhere in there, women are still being put to sleep. So it's not the same 2 drug combos as Twilight Birth. But, I mean, you see this in the movies, like the Mad Men, there's an episode of it where they put Betty to sleep and then she wakes up and her baby's here. I mean, that was still happening for, 65 years. Until women finally started, like, saying, like, no, I don't want that. And then, of course, we have the epidural, and so now it's a little different, But still, I mean, look at the epidural is what we have now, but look at what preceded it. So we just wait another 60 years and we'll see what women are doing.
Right.
Well, that's
hopefully all having their babies at home.
I've mentioned this before, but I always butcher it because I never remember the doctor's name. But the first doctor to say, like, hey, maybe we should wash our hands before we put them into women. Yes. Like, he was put in an insane asylum because the doctors were not on board with what he was talking about, because like, you're crazy, what, germs aren't a thing, or whatever, however it went. But like, just because they do it doesn't mean it's right. Like, so like at that time they were like, oh yeah, this is the new fad, like, let's do this. Like, it's just like how now, like, just because they do it doesn't mean it's right. Like, doesn't mean, I have so many women even now, like, that I know that are good friends that are like, oh, I scheduled my C-section at like 20 weeks because I'm just like, nope, I just want to go in, because they think it's an easier way out, but it is not an easy way out. Like, it is I guess technically you don't have to push a baby out, but like it's still very difficult recovery.
I mean, you
and-
have a newborn and you're recovering from major abdominal surgery. That sounds much harder of a recovery than any kind of labor recovery.
Yeah.
I really think what it is with a cesarean, you know what to expect because it's literally from a textbook, right? You just, here's the things. And women and, you know, of course the medical system, they don't want to like surrender. They want to control every little thing, and childbirth has this big wide range that it can take, you know? I mean, Aliyah, your birth is a perfect example of that. Like you had the home birth and it was still like so long and like you had to do all these different, and you had to wait. Like women don't want to do that. They like just want to boom, be done. And they don't want to wait and see what happens. They just, you know, instant
we want control.
gratification.
Yeah, we all want instant gratification. We want the supplement that's going to change our life. We want, you know, our Amazon stuff to show up the next day. We want our labor to just be in and out. And I don't know. I feel like we're entering a new era where women are like, no, I'm going to take back my authority and my I don't know, God-given strength that I was made to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it because if my first birth was whatever, it was great. I loved it. But the second birth, I don't know. It just, every birth is so different and it's so cool. But I'm at the point where one of our friends had a baby this summer. And when she texted us, I'm in labor, I looked at my husband, I was like, I want to go into labor. And he's like, what is wrong with you? But it's like my experience around labor, like, yes, it was intense. But even if it takes like a day or two, that's a time, and the day is going to pass anyways. You might as well, as much as you can, enjoy the experience. And that's something I will for the rest of my life be grateful for, that anytime someone's like, go into labor, I'm like, dang it, why can't I go into labor? Which is a weird thought to think, but my experiences were as positive as they could be, that now I'm like, oh, let's do it again.
I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's how it's supposed to be. I think that's why the human race has been around for as long as it has been. And I mean, I have been so crass to say, like, if you didn't like your birth experience, probably because it wasn't real birth, you know? I was going to say probably because you did it wrong, but that's not always the case, right? But did it wrong as in walked into the hospital, right? I mean, of course, sometimes, you know, the home birth mom ends up having to go into the hospital for, you know, a cesarean. Like, that does happen, but for the majority, it shouldn't be the majority, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's a good sign that you want to experience birth. I feel like that after all my home births. I'm like, oh, because I didn't ever get my home birth, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
The side note, do you ever see yourself leaving California?
We are actively trying to leave California. We have been for years. We don't want to be here for all the obvious reasons. But my husband's job we're waiting for his job to move us, and they know we want to move. They're based in Texas, so we're like, please, anywhere. Job, you know, positions all over the country. And they just promoted him here, so we're at least going to be here for another like 5 or 6 years until he gets, you know, he's got to get this new location up and running, and then. So we're going to be Californians for a while. Oh, and I should say, this is funny. I don't know if you guys know what my husband does, but he works in the death industry. So.
What does that mean?
Oh.
Well, he runs like a funeral home and a cemetery.
Oh, okay.
So we're like, you know, our kids just know everything about birth and death. It's so fun. Yeah. So he's on call sometimes to go pick up dead bodies, and I'm on call sometimes to.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Bring the new ones in.
Yeah.
What a contrast for your kids.
Isn't that so funny? And we both were not in these industries when we met, so it wasn't like, it was just like meant to be, I guess.
How does a doula license work? Or is it state to state?
Great question. Doulas there is no governing agency over doulas. Doulas do not need to be certified. I am not a certified doula.
That's amazing.
I started a certification process, and I was like, this thing isn't teaching me anything, and I'm putting time into this training when I could just be putting time into my business. So I'm basically completely self-taught. And honestly, that's what I recommend, because the certification agencies have just become another cog in the system of controlling women. You know, doulas are taught, don't advocate. You don't have medical experience. You can't tell your client what to do. You have to support every single woman. It's just baloney.
Yeah. One of my best friends was getting her certification in New Mexico, and that was one they wouldn't let her. I don't remember, it was a few years ago, but she had to attend X amount of C-sections. She had to attend this. And from the agency that she was working under, it was a full doula practice. She was interning under, or whatever you want to say. She actually got in trouble from her manager because she didn't progress in their system because she wasn't supportive of everybody. Because one day she had a conversation in their little doula luncheon about how she prefers unmedicated birth. And they basically said, sorry, you can't progress with us because you don't support everyone. She's like, I would still go to a client if they wanted a C-section scheduled. I'm just saying I personally prefer. And I thought it was crazy that they basically like kicked her out of the club because she wasn't all inclusive.
I've had so many doulas chastise me for saying like, I won't go to like an induction. Like I will take a client who I know is having an induction and they like, I've been called names. I've been like, people come to my DMs and tell me like I'm a horrible person. I'm like,
crazy.
It is crazy. It's nuts. And like, I would never like drop a client or send someone on their own. Like it's just like we said with the hairdresser. Like the hairdresser is outside of her area of expertise, but she feels comfortable. She's going to hand you off to someone else. So doula certifications are...
That's so interesting. I guess I thought it was some sort of a govern something. So that's great.
And so also to answer your question, it's not state by state at all. So like once you have a certification, you're just certified unless that organization kicks you out for breaking one of the rules. But I've never seen, during COVID, some hospitals were asking for certification from doulas to be sure that they weren't just visitors. Major and I have had clients ask for my certification because they wanted to be like reimbursed through insurance. So again, the system, right? It's all part of the system here. So
I'm surprised insurance would even offer to reimburse at all.
Yeah, me too.
I got denied for insurance covering my midwife and doula. So like it was all out of pocket. And again, it was out of budget, but I was like, listen, I have to live with this for the rest of my life. I want to make sure I do my due diligence. I'd rather go into debt and swipe our credit card, pay it off or whatever. But because it's a lifetime. You hear my mom is 65 and still talks about her 7 births, and the things like she remembers the doctors who bullied her. Like she remembers them. She remembers their name. And that says something. But, back to what you were saying about being bullied, about not wanting to go into an induction or your doula friend. It's not because you were holier than thou and you're like, I don't want to go. It's actually because you want better for them.
Yeah.
And you want their postpartum, like Pitocin is a synthetic oxytocin and it has side effects. So you just want better. Like your doulas just want better for you and they just can't be a witness to this cascade of interventions. So you're not a bad person. I just want to say you're not a bad person.
I am strong in this conviction. Like I am unapologetic, y'all. I don't even know. I will say that they are wrong. and it is that. It's that I want them to have the best experience. And I know an induction is setting them up for failure. Like their birth is not going to be physiologic anymore at all whatsoever. And it's also protecting myself. I will not go on being a doula if I only see traumatic birth after traumatic birth after traumatic birth. So it's twofold there.
One of your posts, I loved it. It was, you said something along the lines of you work a 9 to 5, but in the reverse. Will you just elaborate a little more on that? Because we're also homeschooling and I own my own business. So my schedule kind of is committed to my client schedule, but I can just close off my books during school time if I don't want to book clients, which not everyone has that flexibility. But what does your balance look like? Because I'm only in preschool, so I'm still trying to find that balance of homeschool, work, family.
I kind of just realized that I have a reverse 9 to 5. So I truly see my 9 to 5 hours in the day, like when my husband's gone, that is my main job. and what is that, like, what am I doing from that 9 to 5 is the kids, you know, the kids in the house and the homeschool. I mean, I will do some business, like I kind of, in my brain, 3 p.m. is the cutoff for our school day, and I'll do some like work from like 3 to 5 or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's my priority, and instead of having just 2 to 3 hours with my family at night, I have 2 to 3 hours with my business. It's not typically at night, but so I will, my routine right now, and it's ever changing. So that's another thing, is like just having some fluidity with it is going to save me from having like a meltdown, because the structure does not work with motherhood, and I'm sure you guys know that. You need to have like it's like a rhythm versus a routine, right? So for me, what it looks like right now is I'll work my business in the morning. Sometimes my baby gets up with me. My baby, who's 3, she's not a baby anymore. Sometimes she's up with me at 5:30 working, and she'll sit on my lap, or she'll sit over here and play. And that's another thing. It's like, work is not going to be without a child. Like, if they're with me and I can get it done, great. We're going to do the things I can get done when I have my baby next to me. So I do that for a little bit in the morning, eat breakfast, and then I have my morning routine, and I'm really like, I love my mornings. I will do my workout, I will listen to podcasts, I will get ready, and my kids are just on their own. Like, they're doing whatever, it doesn't matter. They're running havoc, blah, blah, blah. And then I turn into homeschool mode, and we homeschool from like 10 to lunch. We break for lunch, and then until maybe 3. And homeschool is not I'm not teaching that whole time. That would be insane. But if I'm teaching that day, I'm teaching. If we're going to the library that day, we're going to the library. If we have co-op that day, we go to the co-op. We go to the park. So I am just trying as hard as I can. You know, the lines are blurry, to focus on my kids 100%, right? Knowing that at 3 o'clock, I'll be able to jump into like maybe business mode if I need to, right? Maybe I'll have an hour in the afternoon, 2 hours, and then we go into our, like, you know, dad's home, family time, bath, dinner, bedtime, Netflix. And it works really well. Like, what more could I ask for? You know, like, really, what more could I ask for, that I get to do all the mom stuff and be there, and have this business that I get to work. It's not easy. Of course, it would be a lot easier for me to work 6 hours in my business. It would be huge if I had 6 hours a day with no kids to work on my business. But ultimately, that's not what I want. Like, ultimately, the whole reason I started a business was so I could homeschool. And so I just have to remind myself of that too when I get too ambitious for my britches. That, like, no, you do this so you can be with your kids. So,
I love it. Because sometimes as a working mom, as much as you don't want to, your kids get the remnants of you, because especially if you're client facing, your clients get the not grouchy, and then you come home and then it's like, it's nice to be able to work in a field where you can, everyone, like, I can drink some coffee at 5 and then go work on clients till 8, but my kids get that, to give them the primary time of my tank, I guess. It's nice.
And it takes a lot of forethought and, like, mindfulness too, especially I've noticed, you know, since we've been homeschooling for, I think, 5 years now, 4 years, and it's so easy, just like with anything, like, you fall into this trap of like, oh, well, we have tomorrow, like, I noticed when I did work the true 9 to 5, I was more like adventurous, like, let's go do this, like, we only have this week of break, like, let's go do all this. And it's so easy to kind of fall into that trap, like, when you're with your kids all the time, like, you could do it whenever. So it does take, you know, some intentionality to make sure that you are being, like, really present. And that's why I love my, like, time zones, because it's like, okay, right now I have my mom brain on, later we'll have the business brain on, you know?
It's got to be freeing too, to be like, if you block out this specific time, even if it has to be flexible during the day, of like, okay, for this next hour, I am businesswoman, and then the kids are going to watch a show as much as, you know, like, or whatever. But then, okay, after this hour, I'm just full mom, because I find sometimes, like, those lines get too blurred, and then I'm like, and then I find myself feeling frustrated, because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get this podcast out. I'm trying to, like, you know, move the needle forward for our family, you know, hopefully with the end goal of financial freedom, you know? I think that's all what we all want, is like, how can we build this up to where basically we can be 100% present parents, you know? Like we would love to just build, you know, businesses to where they could just be like running them in the background and we can just, you know, live in a ranch in Wyoming, you know? That's the goal. Cause we also want to leave our very, democratic state. We are in Illinois and excuse me, enough said. We live in central Illinois. So we would also like to just escape to the middle of nowhere. But again, everything is in seasons. Like, you know, it was freeing for me. I was listening to a podcast with Alex Clark, and she was interviewing a lady, and she was like, yeah, you as a mom, you can have everything, and that's what they like to sell. You can have everything, but you can't have it all at once. And that was freeing to me, because I was like, okay, how are all these other moms for a while there? Because I was working full time and keeping my kid full time and trying to do side hustles and stuff. And I was like, I am a empty shell of a person. And in order for like my family to prosper, like I can't be everything all of the time. And so if, you know, you guys feel free to fill in on any of the gaps, but like I just feel like for the moms that are maybe listening, where like you see all these people who are side hustling and doing all this stuff, it does come at a cost. It does, like, usually if we're thriving on social media, usually like something else is, like our house is a mess. Like the only reason this is clean is because I pushed it all over there. So you can't be everything all of the time, but you can also do hard things. I don't know. It's a weird balance of.
Yeah, it is weird. There is a lot. Everyone's like, you do everything. How do you do it all? I'm like, I don't do everything. I don't have a garden. I don't have sourdough. Okay, I just started a sourdough starter yesterday, you guys. We'll see what happens. Like I just hired someone to clean my house. Like that was like a business goal for a long time. Like, okay, I just need to get to a place where I don't have to clean on the weekends, and then I can podcast instead of clean, right? Because cleaning takes up so many hours, and so yeah, we're not doing everything.
Yeah,
it's definitely not everything.
Yeah. And Irene, you're at the cusp of having more control of your schedule, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, which is going to be nice, because I feel like not that the system tells you, but it's just a natural progression that you build a business and then you get employees and then you do this and this and this, and we're backtracking. I'm going from like 12, 13 employees to no employees, and it's interesting how you get the employees, they do all the work for you, and I'm like, oh good, I don't have employees, I can just do what I need to do and be mom.
Yeah, I would not want employees for that reason. Like
it's not as easy
to get so big that I have to cover someone's salary and that I have to have like team meetings. Like it's as difficult and time consuming as it is that like me and my assistant do everything. Like we're scrappy, but it also keeps me in a manageable place with my business to where I can still, you know, prioritize my kids and do our homeschool stuff and
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be like, I mean, someday the kids will be like, wow, like my mom was hustling, like that was awesome. But they'll remember, like, did she look me in the eyes? Did we play on the floor? Was she a part of my imagination? You know, all those things. Like, that's what I want at the end of the day. I want my kids to be like, wow, my mom loved me well and also was a boss. Like, that's, you know. But anywho, okay, you've been incredible. It's been so nice to like we went over, but I thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us.
Yeah, this was great. I loved everything we talked about. I love that we wrapped it up with business at the end too, because that's my favorite.
Yeah. Good. Well, tell our listeners where they can find you, what you're up to, what courses they can, all the things.
Perfect. So Fierce Lizzy on Instagram, fiercelizzy.com on the internet. I have a podcast, Unapologetically Unmedicated. And I basically, you know, I talk about everything birth. I talk about a little bit of business stuff, homeschool. So if any of those are up your alley, or if you're having a hospital birth, then we need to work together, because everything we just talked about, that's why.
Yeah. We'll have all of the links in the description below. So that you guys that people can reach out to you. We thank you so much for being here, and we're grateful to know you.
Thanks for being with us today. Follow us on Instagram at _underscore_podcast. We'd love to meet you.
Please help us out by subscribing on YouTube and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. Please remember this information is made available to you for informational and educational purposes only. It is in no way a substitute for medical advice.